Breaking news! Nobody around the NFL wants to admit it yet, but the Denver Broncos may have quietly become one of the most dangerous teams in football heading into 2026. And after seeing the schedule the league just handed them, there's one question everybody is starting to ask behind the scenes. Does the NFL already know the Broncos are about to take over the AFC? Because this is not the kind of schedule you give to an average team. This is a schedule built for contenders, built for stars, and built for massive primetime moments. And honestly, Broncos country, some of the matchups waiting for this team could completely change the future of the franchise this season. But before we go any further, make sure you smash that like button right now if you truly believe the Denver Broncos are finally ready to return to the Super Bowl conversation. And I want every optimistic Broncos fan to comment this right now down below. Go Broncos! Our time is coming in 2026. Because after everything this team has been building, the entire NFL is finally being forced to pay attention. Now let's get straight into it, because the NFL did not hold back with Denver this season. Right out of the gate, the Broncos are thrown directly into one of the toughest openings in football. Week 1 on Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs on the road. That alone already tells you everything about how the league views this team. The NFL could have chosen many opening matchups, but they specifically wanted Bo Nix versus Patrick Mahomes under the brightest lights possible. That is not accidental. That is marketing. That is belief. That is the league saying the Broncos are finally relevant again. And things do not get easier after that. The Jaguars come next, and then suddenly Denver runs into what many people are already calling a complete gauntlet. The Rams on Sunday Night Football. Then the 49ers. Then the Seahawks on a short week Thursday Night Football matchup. That stretch alone could define the first half of the Broncos season. What makes this fascinating is that Sean Payton's teams historically have not always started fast early in seasons, but this year there is no room for slow starts. The Broncos are immediately being forced to prove themselves against elite competition. And honestly, maybe that is exactly what this team needs. There will be nowhere to hide. Every game will show exactly where Denver stands among the NFL's best teams. One of the biggest discussions happening around the schedule is the amount of spotlight games the Broncos received. 5 primetime games already scheduled, and honestly, there could be even more flexed later in the season if Denver performs the way many people expect. Think about how insane that is considering where this franchise was just a few years ago. There was a time when the Broncos barely got national television attention at all. Now the NFL is building major broadcasts around them again. And let's be honest about the reason why this is happening. Yes, the defense is strong. Yes, Sean Payton is a high-profile coach. Yes, the roster has improved significantly. But this explosion in national attention is happening because of Bo Nix. The league sees him as one of the rising stars at quarterback. The conversations are changing. It's no longer only Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow dominating headlines. Now Bo Nix is entering those discussions as one of the most exciting young quarterbacks in football. That is why the Broncos are opening on Monday Night Football. That is why they are getting Sunday Night Football against the Rams. That is why they are playing massive holiday games against playoff caliber opponents later in the year. The NFL knows viewers want to watch this team now. And when you look deeper into the schedule, things become even more intense. After the Week 10 bye, the Broncos enter a brutal AFC-heavy stretch that could completely determine playoff positioning. Games against the Steelers, Jets, Raiders, Bills, Patriots, and Chargers are all waiting there. Several of those teams were directly involved in playoff races last season, which means Denver's finish to the season could become an absolute war for seeding. The Christmas Day game against Buffalo in Denver already feels massive months before kickoff. Broncos fans can already imagine the atmosphere at Mile High for that matchup. And then finishing the season against New England and the Chargers? Those games could absolutely carry enormous playoff implications. Some people already believe those matchups could be flexed into even bigger primetime windows depending on how the standings develop. What's also interesting is how quickly Denver faces Kansas City twice this season. Instead of waiting until the very end of the year for division matchups, the Broncos get 2 opportunities against the Chiefs within 7 weeks. That creates a huge opportunity. If Denver can split those games or even shock the league and take both, suddenly the entire AFC West conversation changes immediately. There's also growing belief internally that this Broncos roster could actually be even more balanced than last season. Some analysts are projecting around 12 wins despite the brutal schedule. That says a lot. Vegas may have the over-under lower, but many people around the league think this team is stronger, deeper, and harder to beat now. And maybe the most important part of all this is the mentality shift. Nobody is talking about Denver as a rebuilding project anymore. Nobody is talking about patience. Nobody is talking about development years. The expectation now is winning. The expectation is competing for playoff positioning. The expectation is making noise in January. The biggest reason Broncos fans should feel confident right now is because this team is no longer being treated like an underdog trying to surprise people. The Denver Broncos are being hunted now. Every opponent on this schedule is going to circle these games because they know Denver is becoming one of the most dangerous teams in the AFC. And honestly, that changes the pressure level completely for Sean Payton and this roster. When you look at the structure of this season, you can already tell the NFL expects meaningful football from Denver deep into January. That is why the league stacked this schedule with spotlight moments. The Black Friday game against Pittsburgh, the Christmas showdown with Buffalo, multiple primetime matchups in the first half of the year. The league would never place the Broncos in these positions if they believed last season was a fluke. And this is where Bo Nix becomes the center of everything. The national media is finally starting to understand what Broncos fans already saw developing last season. Bo Nix is not just a young quarterback trying to survive in the NFL anymore. He is becoming one of the faces of the next generation at the position. The conversations around him are different now. Analysts are discussing him alongside the league's elite young quarterbacks because of how quickly he elevated this offense and because of how poised he looked under pressure last season. That's why the opening game against Kansas City feels so massive. It's not just Broncos versus Chiefs anymore. The marketing is centered around Bo Nix versus Patrick Mahomes. Think about that for a second, Broncos country. For years, the AFC West conversation revolved around Denver trying to find stability at quarterback while Kansas City controlled the division. Now the NFL is openly promoting this matchup as one of the biggest quarterback battles in football. That tells you how far this franchise has come. And honestly, the Broncos probably love the fact that the toughest tests are arriving early. Instead of spending months wondering whether they can compete with the best teams, they're going to find out immediately. The Rams, the 49ers, the Seahawks, the Chiefs twice before the bye week, this schedule gives Denver a chance to send a message to the entire NFL very quickly. What's fascinating is that many people around the league still seem hesitant to fully buy into Denver despite the success from last season. Some projections still have the Broncos around 9 or 10 wins, and there are analysts questioning whether they can repeat their dominance against strong competition. But internally, there seems to be a completely different mindset surrounding this team. The belief is growing stronger that Denver is more balanced now, more explosive offensively, and much more prepared for the physical grind of a championship-level season. And that balance could become the biggest difference maker. Last season, there were moments where the Broncos won games in dramatic fashion, but this year there's growing belief that they could start blowing teams out consistently. That is a terrifying thought for the rest of the AFC if it becomes reality. Because if the defense continues playing at a high level while Bo Nix takes another major step forward, this offense could become incredibly difficult to stop. Another detail Broncos fans should pay close attention to is the placement of the bye week. Week 10 might end up being perfect timing for this team. They survive the brutal opening stretch, get a chance to recover physically, and then come back for 8 straight AFC matchups where playoff seeding will likely be decided. That could allow Denver to build serious momentum at exactly the right time of the year. And imagine the atmosphere if the Broncos enter December with double-digit wins already secured. Suddenly that Christmas Day game against Buffalo becomes one of the biggest games in the